years ago, we just had two kids, and we would go grocery shopping, and it was always a handful. The two of them were both under 3 years old, and grocery shopping can be a handful all by itself without having kids around. So at the end of the grocery shopping trip, you'd get up to the cashier, and the cashier would be like, "Were they good?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, they were good," even though it didn't really matter if they were good or not. The experience of shopping in a store can make anybody fussy, especially when there's things you're not allowed to have, like cartoon characters looking at you from cereal boxes. And you go, "Yeah, they've been great." And then the cashier would give us these little fake dollars. And they were fun little dollars that were colorful and had the grocery store's like stupid mascot on it. The mascot was this little paper bag of groceries with a smiley face. Anthropomorphized paper bag of groceries. Just wrap your head around that. Like, the French bread sticking out of it is part of its brain. I mean, what? Anyway. So the kids would get these little dollars, and they'd go over to this machine that was in the front of the store next to the ice or the newspapers or whatever. And they'd put their little fake paper colorful dollars into the machine. And the machine would blurt out a little prize. And the prize was a sticker, invariably. This is a little sticker that was inside one of those plastic eggshells. And you open up the sticker, and now you have the sticker, and it has a number on it. And the number might be 1, the number might be 20. I think that some of them were 50. They would go up to 50, but that was sort of rare. Anyway, so they get the sticker, and my kids would generally stick it on their face or their stomach for whatever reason. But wherever they stuck it, generally on their skin, they'd get a rash from the adhesive was evidently the cheapest imaginable adhesive, because after all, they bought it with a fake dollar with a grocery bag guy on it. Sometimes they put it on their shirts, and then you just couldn't get it off the shirt. That was it, man. That sticker was part of that shirt. You throw it through the washing machine, and there was a circle on that shirt from then on. What my kids didn't know was that these number stickers did not just represent numbers in and of themselves, the same way that the dollars did not represent dollars in and of themselves. That instead, these number stickers were supposed to be put into a book wherein number stickers went. And you would have these little boxes, and you'd fill them with different numbers. And once you got to the target number by adding together the number stickers, you then would qualify for another prize. And that other prize might have been like a set of jacks or a jump rope or maybe a stuffed animal. But there were different ones you could go for within this booklet, and different number goals from which you were aiming. Dude, just for a second, step back here and imagine, cool of the grocery store to have something fun for kids. But what they're doing here is, first of all, they feel like what they're doing is incentivizing good behavior, which, whatever about that. This isn't a parenting class, so I'll step aside from that. But they incentivize this, and they give you a prize, and then you use that prize to get another prize, and then use that prize collected with other prizes, each of which have come from 2 other prizes, and you get a then superior prize. And as far as I know, that's where the chain ends. I don't know if you could get together every single toy, and then once you have the complete set, you get a house or something. My point is that where's the intrinsic value here? Where's the value of the first prize? Where's the value of the second prize, the rash from the sticker? Maybe it was better to put in the books. We probably should have looked into that. But at no point were our under 3-year-old kids presented with the notion, at least on behest of the store, that one of these prizes was in and of itself valuable, that there was a sort of stepping stone towards value. And I'd like to suggest to you that our culture is obsessed with this idea of having every single thing you can do be a stepping stone to somewhere else. That you're on a journey and it's heading somewhere. Now, parts of that I'm not going to contradict, but the overall message, I believe, is exceedingly unhealthy and something that I absolutely like to deconstruct in almost every class that I teach. As my kids got older, they got into kindergarten. And kindergarten can be lots of fun because you have a lot of kids and they do cute stuff and draw funny pictures and relay stories from home in questionable articulations that make the teacher wonder what the hell's going on at home. And it's all lots of fun. And the teacher, I remember one day, one of my children telling me that the teacher was admonishing the class because they weren't focusing on their handwriting skill or whatever. Mind you, these are kindergartners. These are they're 5-year-olds. And what the teacher said was, listen, kindergarten is fun. It's more play than work, but next year's first grade, and that's more work than play, so I need to get you to work now. Let's walk past the inherent contradiction of kindergarten being more play than work if what she has to do is get you to work now. I remember this. Do you remember this from being a kid? You remember how your teacher was always pointing you towards what was next as the very serious thing with a very serious consequence that was heading at you full speed, and that the fact that you weren't taking what's going on now seriously showed them that this next step was really going to screw you up. And there's this impending sense of doom coming around the corner every single grade. I remember my fourth grade teacher holding up a paper after we were asked to turn them in when we had completed them and saying, somebody didn't put their name on this paper. And this was followed up with, they don't put up with this in the fifth grade. In the fifth grade, if you don't have your name on your paper, you get a 0. And with that 0, you can start to rack up an F, and then you may have to repeat the fifth grade, and you're never getting to a college at that point. And I mean, there's always, whatever it was. I mean, in middle school, they start threatening you with how you're not taking it seriously enough, but high school's coming, and high school's going to whip you into shape, so you should get into shape now, so high school doesn't have to whip quite so hard. And in high school, they're like, dude, college is coming, and you're totally screwed. And in college, even in college, I talk to professors who pine on about how we need to be preparing these students for the real world, as if within the walls of this classroom, there's someone who is highly aware of the singularity of state that is this real world that we need to be preparing them for, as if each and every person is not going to be encountering their own real world that is based on not so much their merit as it is their context that they come in with. All of this sort of leads to this overall notion of the American dream. The American dream being this idea that what you're doing here is coming in with a certain skill set and developing that skill set and making it better and then being rewarded for it. And through your hard work, through your dedication, you are going to succeed in getting that bigger house than your neighbors and that better car than your neighbors and to live a better life than the one that your parents had to live. Now, there's all sorts of data we could dig into here about how this American dream played out for different generations, and within that, we should look at the different races and socioeconomic groups for how this American dream myth sort of plays out. But I do submit to you that it's a myth. I submit to you that in plenty of places and around the world in our current state, opportunities for upward mobility and for an improvement of your quality of life and longevity err on better sides than they do in America. But we're not putting America on trial necessarily here. I'm just saying that this myth is a highly motivational myth. And it starts ostensibly in a shopping cart when you're given colorful dollars to put into machines to get numbers to rack up and collect in order to collect prizes. It's embedded deeply around us at all stages. And yet, the most recent data that I've read was that less than 6% of people within this country actually will end up in a better economic state than they were born into. And that's a significant number, 6%, but it's not this promise of hard work. But what I want to focus on always with these lectures of mine is not the idea that you're going to improve yourself and you're going to get better and you're going to become a more drastically rewarded person throughout your life. Instead, I want you to focus on the things that you can really control, and that most of that control is going to come from dealing with yourself and your expectations and what it is that you can manage despite what your culture communicates to you. As is common for me, I want to pause for a moment and consider, within the context of what I'm saying, some of the ancient mystics and their wisdom that has lasted for thousands of years, usually for good reason. And in this case, it's this story about the Buddha in the 84th problem. This is told in lots of different ways, and right now, at this moment, with you listening, this is my story, so forgive me if I get it wrong. But the Buddha was a traveling speaker, and he would come to different regions and speak about his teachings and his way of life, and this myth built up around him that this guy was going to solve your problems. And so this dude from an audience comes up to the Buddha after a speech and says, "Hey man, I got a lot of problems that you've got to fix. My kids disrespect me. My wife hates me. I think she's running around on me. My job sucks, and I'm constantly being bothered by people. And my foot aches. I mean, God, I can't move it this way." And the Buddha goes, "Whoa, hold up, bro, hold up. Sounds to me like you got a lot of problems here." And the guy goes, "Yeah, I got tons of problems, and I really heard that you're the guy who can fix them." And the Buddha says, "Okay, listen, I've heard you out. And let me tell you, every single person has 83 problems. They have 83 problems that cannot be solved, that are always going to be there. But you, sir, have an 84th problem. And that 84th problem is the one that we can fix." And the dude's like, "Okay, that's kind of sucks. One problem." And the Buddha goes, No. You take care of this 84th problem, and you will achieve happiness." And the guy goes, "Whoa, well, which one is it? What's the 84th problem? Is it my foot? Is it my wife? Is it my job?" And Buddha goes, No. Your 84th problem is wanting to be rid of the other 83 problems. I pause there for dramatic effect. Perhaps not long enough, because I want you to grok for a second just what I'm talking about here. This idea that the one problem you might be able to address is getting rid of your problems, the desire to get rid of those problems, that the minute you sort of accept your context and accept what you're dealing with, you then gain agency over yourself. And the irony then, of course, is that you might be able to start affecting these problems. That once they've been accepted and they're seen as part of your life, you erase that line between yourself and that issue or that problem. You cease to see it as something that is encumbering on your being, on your way of seeing yourself. Then you can start to adjust your being and your way of seeing yourself, and that might actually make that problem go away. Now, enlightenment may be a long way off from sitting here listening to a guy like me talk. So let's look instead at more what is specifically manageable and how our society and especially our schooling system deal with what is manageable. In this case, we'll sort of shrink this down to the notions of setting goals, of goal work, as I like to sometimes call it. Because most of us don't have a goal in mind. Most of us want to be successful. We want to make a good living. We want the American dream. And all of these are very nebulous ideas. They're nebulous because there's always more. There's always more that you can achieve. There's always more that you can do. There's always more out there to possess. There's always going to be somebody doing better than you. This whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses is certainly a big part of our American dream, since the 1950s at least. And the minute you start to shrink this down away from the nebulous idea of more, and into specific things, you begin to take agency over goal setting and can then start to sort of climb this ladder, not of necessarily being better, but of really and truly seeing a direction that you might be trying to work towards. So there's really two kinds of goals to talk about. And one of them is, through instrumental activity. You do something that produces something else, right? So a carpenter builds a house. A painter paints a picture. It's an instrumental activity. A car mechanic fixes a car in order to make it run. A teacher teaches in order to make people educated. It's a type of work that produces some reward. But there's another way of framing these actions, that is, these instrumental activities, into something that's a little bit more intrinsically powerful. And that's called an autotelic activity, where the performance of what you're doing is better than the result of what you're doing. So, for example, in this case, a carpenter is building a house, not necessarily to have this completed house, but to engage in the artwork of construction. A painter, obviously, would paint not just to arrive at a painting, but to experience the brushwork, to experience the different technique, and for this deep sort of concentration that it may take in order to make a vision come to life. I have a mechanic from back home who his work as a mechanic is very much linked with his own satisfaction. This makes it where he's kind of cheaper than other mechanics, quite frankly. He's an economics professor as well. And he works on cars because he really is able to concentrate and enjoy himself in the working on car. Teachers who teach not just to create somebody who's educated, but because they like to talk, they like to explain, they like to develop ideas, they like to explore ideas, they like to generate ideas from a group of minds around them, and not just try to take those minds from point A to point B with this notion that point B is being able to recite back the right sort of facts, but instead to sort of generate a point B, to generate it from the indulging in discussion and exploration and explanation with each other. So one of these goals is very success dependent. And success dependent, I would present to you as a negative. Success dependent is it's results driven. It's very capitalist. It's not really based on things that you can control. So, as a writer, I've really had to deal with this, that being success-based as a writer doesn't mean necessarily that I will polish and work on and hone my craft in order to arrive at a bestseller that then is able to paper my home with money and let me travel and see the world. An actor may audition for piece after piece after piece and really hone their skills and study and just dive into the material of what it takes to really act. This does not mean that that they will arrive naturally someday on a stage where they're accepting a Best Actor or Actress award. Of course, we know this because we've probably indulged in some of these things. I mean, I used to be a musician, and while I may not have been the best musician out there, I can tell you that I was a lot better than some of the stuff you hear on the radio, which isn't hard. Pick up an instrument for the first time, sing along to a couple songs, and you might be better than some of what you're hearing on the radio already. And that's one of the problems with being really success-driven, is that you don't control the industry, you don't control who you know, you don't control what someone's looking for. There's only so much you can affect. And being success-driven can be a massive letdown. It can be a letdown because you can begin to feel like you're not valued. You can begin to feel like your voice doesn't matter. You can begin to feel like nobody understands you, that you're purposeless because you are not achieving that success that you felt you were promised. Now, is there one among us who at age 15 did not stand there and think that we were going to be the one who breaks through, that we were going to be the one who was rich by age 25, that we were going to be the one who was super successful? And that's part of the whole thing, is that in high school, there's this magic question that's constantly asked of you, what do you want to be? And it's a hypothetical that presents you with the notion that all it takes to be something is the right amount of effort and the right direction of study. And that you will step into this, and if you want to be an actor, you don't see yourself working in community theater for 40 or 50 years. You don't see yourself working in commercials. You don't see yourself being part of the company in a Broadway show. You see yourself as standing there with the spotlight. But there's a nobility in these other things. There's a nobility in the opportunity to practice and perfect your art regardless of what is valued and sought and rewarded. Because you can't control those things. You can't control it, and nobody ever really got to that point just because of their skill. That's not part of our narrative. That's not part of our American dream and meritocracy myth that we are so deeply embedded in. Embedded to the point where we feel like it's a sort of natural law. Now look, when we talk about ancient wisdom, we talk about this idea, let's say, of from India, of karma and of samsara, and of birth and death and rebirth in order to sort of improve and evolve our consciousness. This wasn't some sort of edict of Hinduism. This was not written down as holy scripture in some book that people accessed and then started to believe because the priest told them or something. This was something that was deeply embedded in a culture for thousands of years before it was ever written down. That it was a natural law. It was seen as the way things are. The same way that the ancient Greeks did not have their gods written down in one central sort of document. That they had stories, and these stories unfolded over hundreds of years, and that they are loosely connected, but that they saw this idea of these gods governing different aspects of themselves and playing with their fortunes and fates and whatnot as a natural law, as just part of the way things are. Not so much through figurehead, though there was plenty of that, but through being. And so there wasn't another point of view considered. Now, if somebody were to sit down and write the religion of today, yes, they're going to be pulling a lot from our other influences, from religious influences, say, of Catholicism or the Judeo-Christian tradition and Islamic tradition would all sort of be folded into a lot of the notions of what life is like in the West. But they would also compile many of our more recent things that add into the myth of meritocracy and capitalism. I've said something like this before, that they would add in this story of Scrooge, that they would add in It's a Wonderful Life here and there, that they would add in Citizen Kane, Great Gatsby, all of these different things that speak to us through the language of the meritocracy. These things that speak to us through the language of capitalism. Barbie would be a huge part of this religion that future historians look back and see as part of our way of life, that, for lack of a better word, would be seen as our wisdom, our tradition, our religion. Barbie, Victoria's Secret, the music industry, all of this would connect in with this. And we see it as this sort of natural way that things are, this success-driven society. So the other way to go here is to be mind-dependent. Now, if we look at the senses as the way that we connect to the world, the way we bring the world in, those are brought into the modules of the brain, and the brain can be just as reactive and as undisciplined as the senses are. They can be deeply controlled by those senses. So above the brain, we have the mind, and the mind is this radar of consciousness that understands the way we are taking things in and deploys the way that we are going to act on them. And so when we look at mind-dependent goals, these are more performance-driven, not success-driven, not results-driven, performance-driven. They are mindful and slow, generally. They do not follow the path of improvement that is sort of laid out for you, this stepping stone notion of getting from point A to point B. You hear people say this all the time. Oh, by my age, I should be a lot better than this. How in the world do you know? They are about a practice. They're about unifying your attention. They are about building brain cells in order to dedicate more of the way you think towards this goal. They're about being in flow. This notion of flow set out by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the idea that there is an activity that you perform that is so deeply engaging that your feelings of time melt away, that you don't feel deeply occupied, you're not constantly watching your watch, but that you're at one with the way your hands are doing something. You're at one with the words that you're putting down on paper, that you're at one with the marks you're making on a page. And they are free of success. They are free of results. They are free of the opinions of others. Now, look, this is really hard to put down and say, yeah, this is how I'm doing it from now on. Really hard, because I want what I want right now. I want what I want to be on the horizon, maybe, and to be almost there. I want to know that it's going to happen. That's what I want. But dude, what is want? What does it matter what you want? What you want is stifling. What you want is going to drive you crazy. Most people throughout history do not get what they want. But in development, in performance-driven goals, you may arrive somewhere that you didn't know you wanted. And if you've been living with these goals and living as this developmental being that is deeply connected to their practice, probably where you arrive is going to be somewhere pleasing, for what that's worth. So it's a lot to wrap your head around. I mean, for example, the first book that I wrote when I was 22, I wanted this to launch me. I wanted this to be the thing. I was looking for the movie contract. I was looking for the book contract. And with every single rejection letter I got from an agent or a publisher, I was crushed. I was disturbed. Did they not see this? Did they not see the quality and the promise and the amazingness of this work? And so I wrote a second book and sent that out. And again, there was interest, but there was crushing feelings. And at that time, I remember the book Twilight had come out. And I remember reading Twilight because I really liked the cover. It was an awesome cover. Back off, it was boss. And dude, listen, I couldn't stand it. It's okay if you like it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You can like whatever you want to. But I couldn't stand that book. I read it from cover to cover, and I absolutely couldn't stand it. And I remember reading at the time, this sort of like shock factoid in a magazine that said, did you know that the author was rejected by 12 different publishers before the book was published? And it was probably less than 12. It was probably like 7 or something. And which, first of all, any writer knows getting rejected by 7 or 12 publishers is just an afternoon. But okay. So, and of course, my takeaway from this was that, hey, these were some publishers that have really good taste. But it was that 8th publisher or that 13th publisher, whoever it was that picked it up, that put their taste aside and said, with a really boss cover, this is going to be a hit, man. Boom. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was good. And this crushed me. This crushed me because I had been like working and honing and workshopping and studying. I got a master's in writing, for God's sake. Doesn't this count for something? And I'd been going to conferences and whatnot. And where's my bestseller? I'll write a crappy book and become a bestseller for you. But listen, this is a buyer's market. They have all the books in the world they could choose from. They can do whatever they want to with it. They can manufacture success. We've seen it happen. Take your favorite industry, and you can see plenty of evidence of manufacturing a successful movie, manufacturing a successful band or album or whatever. And one day I was sitting with myself, and I was in my mid or late 20s and feeling crushed about this. And I said to myself, well, I have this other story I'm going to write. What's the point if it's not going to necessarily go anywhere? And I realized that it's because I have this story I want to write. I want to write. If I'm a writer, that does not mean plugging into the successful life. If I'm a writer, that means performing the act of sitting down with my butt in the chair and my hands on the pen or the keyboard and writing. And that if I don't get fulfillment out of that, why would a bestseller do any more? If I don't get fulfillment out of how I spend my day, why would I want a reward for that? There's all sorts of things we could have gone into that, seemingly promise a reward. At the age when I decided I wanted to be a writer, I could have decided to be a brain surgeon, let's say, and just because I know nothing about the medical industry, let's suggest that all you have to do is follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever steps, and then arrive at successful brain surgeon, and you're making, a starting salary of $380,000 a year or whatever it is, and that'd be fine. That'd be great. But that's not what I wanted to do. That's not how I wanted to spend my day. Yuck. It's not what I wanted to study. Ugh. That's not for me. And, within that, there's probably brain surgeons who are listening to this. I flatter myself. Brain surgeons listening to this and going, yeah, that's not how it works, bro. That's not how it works. I'm sure it doesn't. Because the success-based goals are fraudulent. Success-based goals will hold you back. Now, this is one place where I have been really lucky. I have been really lucky because I am not a perfectionist. I have lived my life not being a perfectionist. I can produce something, I can write something, I can engage in something and have it not be perfect and be okay with that. Now, it takes some work to sit down and make it better. It takes some commitment to adjust what I've done and improve something, and that's a shame. But we do it. We go through those acts. Make it better, make it closer to perfect. But But I've known perfectionists who have been so utterly arrested by the imperfection of their first try, by the imperfection of their process, that they just drop it. They just drop it. They go, screw it, I'll be a lawyer. Or whatever. And that's sad to me. That sucks because you've let this notion of perfect, which is oscillating enough to constantly battle against what you've done, the same way that our conscience always makes us feel guilty and never is very rewarding. And you've let it derail you, and it's from an imaginary place. And you're imagining people's opinions, you're imagining people's reactions, you're imagining something that is uncreatable or undoable, and you're letting that damn you. It's the same thing we do when we regret things. And we look back and we go, oh, we really should have done this instead of that, or we really shouldn't have moved there, I really shouldn't have taken that job, whatever. And then you imagine for yourself what your life would be like if you didn't move there, you didn't take that job, and you stayed on some other course. And when you imagine that life, you imagine none of the nuanced complications that you would have encountered. You imagine only this sort of perfect, ABC list of occurrences that would have led to some imagined success that you're not having right now. And that's, we let these imaginary worlds collide with us, especially when we're goal making. So it'd be nice if school were more based on autotelic activities, on the idea of getting better. And usually they're not. Usually you have teachers who want to see things be perfect. They want that reward too. But if we were to focus on instead of grades and success and quick results, we would be less distracted from all of this end game thing and be more absorbed in what it is that we're doing. We would start to find ourselves probably, ironically, being more successful. But that wouldn't matter as much because you don't build a life that you love by doing things that you hate. You build a life that you love by doing the things that you love. Now listen, that's tough. There's some tough stuff here because if you're somebody who really, really, really wants to make, the perfect shaker-style rake and have that be appreciated and bought, and that's how you want to spend your day fashioning these beautiful, amazing, perfect rakes. Look them up sometime, the shaker rake. Woo! You're not going to make your living that way. You're going to have to probably find some other way to make a living, and nobody likes to, work the retail job that supports that, or, have that 1,000 newspaper routes or whatever it would be that you do to get there. But when you're making that rake, if that's that activity that's going to bind you with yourself and make those lines of success disappear, then you're going to start really indulging in this life that you love. And if that's not worth it, what would success do that would change your mind about it?